Today we're going to learn what paraphrasing is and to what extent paraphrasing is used in the IELTS. On top of that, we're going to take a look at 2 strategies for writing an acceptable paraphrase in the IELTS. Stay tuned. Paraphrasing means putting someone else's ideas into your own words. So paraphrasing a source involves changing the wording while keeping the original meaning. So generally speaking, a paraphrase does not match the source word for word, involves putting a passage from a source into your own words, and changes the words or phrasing of a passage but keeps the original meaning. In general, we have 2 types of paraphrasing. Number 1, academic paraphrasing, and number 2, which is a subcategory of number 1, IELTS paraphrasing. Academic paraphrasing, as the name suggests, is used for academic purposes. So imagine you're studying at the university level and you're trying to write your thesis. In this scenario, you need to use academic paraphrasing, which involves paraphrasing a paragraph or maybe several paragraphs. In IELTS, however, things are much easier. So all you need to do is to be able to recognize a paraphrase and paraphrase 2 to 3 sentences at most. We can paraphrase a sentence at 2 levels. Number 1, vocabulary level, and number 2, grammar level. At vocab level, we simply use synonyms, and at grammar level, we change the grammar or the structure of the sentence. We often combine these 2 strategies to come up with an acceptable paraphrase in the IELTS. Remember, academic paraphrasing involves more steps and more strategies, but for IELTS, these 2 strategies are enough. Now let's take a look at some IELTS examples to learn the strategies and of course find out to what extent paraphrasing is used in the IELTS. In the first 2 parts of the IELTS, which are listening and reading, you need to be able to recognize a paraphrase. In the listening part of the IELTS, the speaker or the speakers use different words in the recording than those which are used in the questions. So what you need to do is to identify the keywords in the questions and look for their synonyms in the recording. Let's take a look at this example. This example is taken from page 11 of Cambridge IELTS 15. First, let's take a look at this question. According to the speaker, the company A has been in business for longer than most of its competitors. B arranges holidays to more destinations than its competitors, and C has more customers than its competitors. So what is the first step here? The first step is identifying the keywords. But the question is, how do I identify the keywords? Based on this question and the options, what I expect to hear in the recording is a comparison between this company and other companies. So the word then could help me a lot to locate the comparisons in the recording. Another point is, if you look at the second half of the options, you can see that they are similar. So you have then most of its competitors, then its competitors, and then its competitors. But the most important point you need to know is, in comparisons, the most important keyword is the criterion of comparison. So for option A, the criterion of comparison is the time they have been in business. For option B, the number of destinations is the criterion of comparison. And for option C, the number of customers. Now let's listen to the recording to see how the speaker paraphrases these options.
Good morning. My name's Erica Matthews, and I'm the owner of Matthews Island Holidays, a company set up by my parents. Thank you for coming to this presentation, in which I hope to interest you in what we have to offer. We're a small family-run company, and we believe in the importance of the personal touch. So we don't aim to compete with other companies on the number of customers. What we do is build on our many years' experience, more than almost any other rail holiday company, to ensure we provide perfect holidays in a small number of destinations, which we've got to know extremely well.
If you look at the script, you can see that all of our keywords are mentioned in the recording in some way. So we have the number of customers, many years experience, more than, and number of destinations. As you can see, while the keywords of option B and C are repeated, option A has been paraphrased to many years experience, more than. So has been in business is paraphrased to many years experience. And longer than is paraphrased to more than. Now let's see which option is correct. So for option B we have, so we don't aim to compete with other companies on the number of customers. That simply means we have fewer customers. And for option C we have small number of destinations. So the correct option is option A. One thing you need to notice, while option A is the correct answer, option B, which is wrong, is mentioned earlier in the recording to distract you. For the reading part, I've chosen this example from page 23 of Cambridge IELTS 15. First, let's read this question. Which two benefits of automated vehicles does the writer mention? A. Car travelers could enjoy considerable cost savings. B. It would be easier to find parking spaces in urban areas. C. Travelers could spend journeys doing something other than driving. D. People who find driving physically difficult could travel independently. And E. A reduction in the number of cars would mean a reduction in pollution. As my first step, I try to identify the keywords in each of the options. So for option A, I choose car travelers, enjoy, cost savings. In option B, easier, parking spaces, urban areas. C, travelers, spend, doing something other than driving, which means doing something else. D, physically difficult and independently. E, reduction, number of cars, pollution. Now let's read this paragraph to see A, how our options are paraphrased in the text, and B, to see if we could find any synonyms of our keywords. In the first line we have, another aim is to free the time people spend driving for other purposes. Other purposes means something else and is one of the keywords that we identified in option C. The next two lines actually clarify other purposes or something else. In the fourth line we can see those who are challenged by existing mobility models such as older or disabled travelers. That's the definition of people who find driving physically difficult in option D. Another important word is autonomy. Autonomy means independency, and independently is our keyword in option D. As you know, we have task 1 and task 2 for the writing part of the IELTS. For both tasks, you need to be able to paraphrase the rubric in the introduction part of your writing. Remember that paraphrasing the rubric is a part of your introduction and not all of it. Now let's take a look at some examples. This example is taken from page 10 of Writing for IELTS. First, let's read the rubric. The chart below shows the numbers of male and female research students studying 6 science-related subjects at a UK university in 2019. My first step is identifying the words which I know an appropriate synonym for. So in this case we have the chart below. Instead of the chart below, I can say the provided chart or the given chart. So the provided chart shows. Instead of shows, I can say illustrates. So the provided chart illustrates. One thing you need to know, there is a fixed phrase which you could use in topics which compare men and women. That phrase is gender distribution. So in this case we can say the provided chart illustrates the gender distribution. Next, we have male and female research students studying 6 science-related subjects. Instead of that, I can say students doing scientific research across a range of disciplines. So my final paraphrase could be, the provided chart illustrates the gender distribution of students doing scientific research across a range of disciplines at a UK university in 2019. As my second step, I could change the structure of my paraphrase, although I think this paraphrase looks good already. However, we could change this paraphrase into passive. So our final paraphrase could be, the gender distribution of students doing scientific research across a range of disciplines at a UK university in 2019 is illustrated by the provided chart. Now let's take a look at this task 2 example. Convenience foods will become increasingly prevalent and eventually replace traditional foods and traditional methods of food preparation. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this opinion? In this case, I have 2 options when it comes to paraphrasing. Option A is to agree with this statement while paraphrasing, and option B is to disagree with this statement while paraphrasing. As usual, my first step is identifying the words which I know an appropriate synonym for. In this case we have increasingly prevalent, replace, traditional methods, and food preparation. First, let's agree with the statement and then disagree. From my perspective, convenience foods will be significantly popular in the future to the extent that they would be considered as a substitute for traditional foods and the way they were made. For disagreement, I can say, while some people may argue that convenience foods will be significantly popular in the future to the extent that they would be considered as a substitute for traditional foods and the way they were made, I believe blah blah blah. As you can see, I have used passive structure in my paraphrase as well. So instead of methods of food preparation, I have used the way they were made. At grammar level, there's a strategy which could be very, very helpful. That strategy is changing the form of the words. Let's take a look at our example one more time. Here's the rubric of the question. Here's my first paraphrase. And here's the second version of my first paraphrase. The second version is, from my perspective, there will be a significant growth in popularity of convenience foods in the future to the extent that they would be considered as a substitute for traditional foods and the way they were made. So I have changed significantly into significant and popular into popularity. I have also added growth. One point you may have noticed so far is, in our paraphrases, we usually add words that were not in the original text or delete words that existed in the original text. The key point here is, adding words or deleting words should not change the original meaning. In the speaking part of the IELTS, as you know, the examiner is going to ask you a variety of questions about different topics. Here, what you need to be careful about is repeating the examiner's questions in your answers. What you need to do is identify the keywords in the questions and use synonyms. Of course, sometimes we do not know any synonyms for the keywords, or maybe there's no synonym for the keywords. In these scenarios, it is okay to repeat the keywords, but overall, do not repeat the keywords or avoid repetition as much as possible.
This example is taken from page 97 of Speaking for IELTS. First, let's take a look at this question from part 1 of IELTS Speaking. What do you like doing most with your family? I can answer this question in 2 ways. Number 1. What I like doing most with my family is having nice long meals with good food and drink, and a few jokes for desserts. Or, I like having nice long meals with good food and drink, and a few jokes for dessert. As you can see in my first answer, I have repeated the examiner's question. One point you need to know, there is a structure in English called cleft sentences which are used for emphasis. And in some cases like this, they may look like repetition. But a student who uses the cleft structure once or twice for emphasis sounds very different than a student who just keeps repeating the examiner's questions. In the speaking part of the IELTS, one of the criteria for marking your score is lexical resource. Based on the public version of IELTS speaking band descriptors, in order to get band 6 or above for lexical resource, you need to be able to paraphrase successfully. One point you need to know, if you do not attempt paraphrasing, or if you rarely attempt paraphrasing, you will get band 3 or 4 for lexical resource. But if you attempt paraphrasing and make a few mistakes, you will get band 5 for lexical resource. So make sure to practice the strategies you learn in this lesson next time you're in a conversation. If you like this video, please subscribe for more excellent IELTS videos.